Okay. Well, welcome everybody. And as we get started, a couple of sort of helpful tips. At the bottom of your screen, you'll notice if you run your cursor over the bar at the bottom, there's a participant logo there. And actually, if you click on the participant, if you click on that, the list of everybody in the meeting will show up. And that's where the raise your hand function is. So as we go along, if you want to make a comment or have a question, if you raise your hand, then Jeff Clark and Jenna and I will be able to see that, and you can join in the conversation. So that's or you can sort of do the American Sign Language approach and do this, and we'll get back to you. So either way. So
one other note, the chat room is closed except to talk to the hosts. You cannot talk to each other, and that's done for security reasons. So it is what it is. It keeps things a little bit saner for us.
Okay.
And Linda's the timekeeper.
Yep.
Yes. Okay.
We will end this meeting at 9 o'clock.
Yep. So I'd like to quickly sort of go through the list and do our quick introductions. My name is Jeff Comstock. I live in Ward 7, and I'm a member of the steering committee. Linda?
Linda Della Duca, and I am on the steering committee. I'm going to be doing the timekeeping tonight, and rest assured, we will end the meeting at 9 o'clock.
Thank you.
Jeff Clark, Ward 4, steering committee, and I'll be managing the waiting room with Jenna.
Jenna?
Hi, Jenna O'Donnell. Good evening, everyone. Ward 4 and steering committee with my daughter Lillian, who's about 8 months old. So Lily and I will be bouncers along with Jeff Clark. And maybe Bridget's cat.
I'm Eric Corman, Ward 4, steering committee.
Carol?
Hi, I'm Carol Odie. I live in Ward 4 and I'm the state representative from District Chittenden 6-1.
Thank you. Bob?
Bob Hooper, Ward 4 also, same MO as Carol, except I'm from 6.1. Just a little bit of difference. And we're happy to be here.
Okay. Sylvia?
Sylvia Knight. I'm in Ward 7. Fair point.
And Bob Wright, I'm in Ward 7.
Hello, Bridget. Bridget.
It's Bridget Bozak,
Oh, okay.
Apple Tree Point, Ward 4. Thank you very, very much for having this meeting.
Oh, see, now the list is shuffling on me. Matt.
Matt Hurlbert. I am steering committee member and Ward 7.
Sarah?
Sarah
Carpenter, Ward 4, City Councilor.
Thank you. Mark?
I'm Mark Barlow, and I live in Ward 4.
Robert? Don't forget to hit your...
Yeah, all right. So I'm Robert Bristow Johnson, and I'm in Ward 7, and I'm just a schlub.
Chris?
Hello, everybody. I'm Chris Pearson. I'm one of your state senators. I live here in Burlington and look forward to the discussion.
Thanks. And looks like Stephen. Steve, you there?
Move on.
Okay. Well, I think that looks like the list from everybody.
Martine, you didn't get Martine.
Okay, I apologize. Yeah. Hello, Martine.
Hello, everybody. Martine Gulick,
Ward 4 School Commissioner. Good to see everybody.
Is there anyone I missed? Because this list sort of keeps shuffling itself around.
I was driving, so I didn't get in. Stephen Hamlin, I'm in Ward 4. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Good. Okay, so the first portion of our meeting is always elected officials. So, well, since our 6-1 representatives are here, both in attendance, why don't we begin with Carol and Bob? You folks have the floor.
Ed.
Well, today I just presented on the House floor a bill H-833, which is going to study our surface waters in the state of Vermont, and also is going to look at what happens when there is a surface water transfer between one basin and another basin. This is something, it's very important for us to know what's happening with our surface water in Vermont. We need to know it not only for environmental concerns, but because industry and business needs to know that they can depend on a good water source to run their businesses. So that's one thing that happened today. We continue to work on COVID-19 economic recovery and relief. It's incredibly important. We have allocated over $1 billion of federal corona relief funds to help small businesses, to help arts organizations, nonprofits, healthcare, to help individuals in relief and recovery. Bob and I continue to be on a little committee where people who are not able to get their unemployment insurance and their pandemic unemployment insurance contact us. And although it's a little bit of a different system than what we were doing previously, we encourage anyone with those problems anywhere in the state to continue to contact us, and we will get your problem right up there to Commissioner Harrington, who is the head of the Department of Labor, and try to get you the relief that you deserve. And I think I'll just turn it over to Bob at this point.
So Carol, if I can jump in, could you give a sort of a quick explanation of what interbasin transfer for surface water means? Because I'm sure there's a lot of people that aren't really familiar with what that concept is.
Well, there are different watersheds in Vermont. And so everything that drains into Lake Champlain is one watershed, and everything that drains into the Connecticut River and so forth, that's another watershed. So we want to make sure that we don't get into a situation here in Vermont, which exists in some other places that are that have issues with insufficient water, where one basin is taking from another, and then just changing the way surface water and actually also groundwater is able to function in our state. With climate change, we're getting more intense weather patterns where we get more intense rainfall, and it happens not in the summer. And then in the summer, we're getting more dry periods. This affects surface water and affects the amount of water, groundwater that we have. And so we have to be very cognizant, and we have to do what other states like Maine, New Hampshire, New York, Connecticut, Rhode Island is working on it also. What they've done is to first assess what exists and then figure out how will we be able to continue to develop business-wise and to live as one another as neighbors, and be able to use conserve and use the water that we have.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for asking. Sorry.
It's all right.
It's been a long day.
Jeff,
Bridget, you
before
had a
we
question?
go, I think we skipped over announcements, and
Oh.
maybe we could do that
Oh.
before Bob goes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you for that. is there anyone who has an announcement that they would like to share with the neighborhood?
Jeff, I do. I actually have an announcement. Thank you very much, Jeff. Jeff Clark. Jeff, I have an announcement and a question for Carol. The announcement is that, as many of you on the call today know, I'm a member of the board for Steps to End Domestic Violence. We used to be called Women Helping Battered Women. You may recall that name, but now it's Steps to End Domestic Violence. I'm just to share with you that the need is great. The resources are thinning, and the incidence of domestic violence in our community is on the rise. And those who are being abused are being shut in with their abusers. So this year we've launched a fundraiser. I would only ask all of you to go to the website, Steps to End Domestic Violence. There's a tab saying Get Involved, and the event is on there, and the event is called Steps for Social Change. Thank you very much. Carol, Odie, my question to you simply was, what was the number of your bill? H what?
H 833. And I would recommend, it is a spectacular article. If you get to the website for, I'll have to, it's a multi-step process, but if you can get a testimony from Vermont Law School, they wrote an absolutely beautiful long paper on this issue. And it's the Environmental Advocacy Clinic at Vermont Law School who did it. And I'll help you and get that link to you. It's a great paper.
Thank you.
Mr. Hooper.
Thank you. Bridget, I still have my 7th grade science project where I stood in the front of the class with a Pepsi bottle and a sprinkler head on it and shook that into the hills, and it went down into a little pond, and then it went into the lake area. Then it went back up to the cotton that was above the, it's called the water cycle. I still remember it, and oddly enough, I still have it. Carol's right. We've been very busy the last week, basically. I think I've spent more time looking at myself on one of these little tiles than I probably ever have in my life. Just for the record, I don't think I'm getting any better looking either. A lot of the stuff that we've been doing on government operations, the first and probably most important thing is this week, I think this week, H952, which was the changes to the city of Burlington's charter. I presented on the floor 2 days in a row, actually, it got presented. Those were the changes to timing of filing of petitions for elections that didn't coordinate with the state elections. They're known as special elections, so that now officially, instead of getting 2 sets of early voting ballots, because we've moved the time frame up and it's been all approved as far as the House anyway so far, you'll get 1 mailing, and a lot of people won't be as confused, and it'll cost us a lot less money. The other thing was we changed the amount of money that goes into the Housing Trust Fund, boosting it back up to what it was when it was originally conceived. That's how Burlington primarily funds housing initiatives for people in need. We're still looking at COVID stuff, but not in terms of the stuff behind us, but more the stuff in future. We're expecting this plague to go on for a while. So next year for town meeting, a lot of the groups that usually come together in a Grange Hall or something like that are not going to be able to. So we facilitated the ability for those towns to use the Australian ballot instead of the town meeting type format. A lot of how government functions comes through our committee, and we're trying to plan ahead so that there aren't problems in the future. We've done a lot of work with the basically the stuff that we see every time we drive down North Avenue, Criminal Justice Training Council criteria, changing the way police officers are trained and what they're trained to do. We still as citizens need to take into consideration that I don't think we have a very good idea of what all we ask our cops to do. Some of it's very appropriate, some of it might not be. At some point, we need to make a decision about that sort of stuff. We also put out a bill on use of force this week. Good bill, sets some real strong criteria for when it's appropriate to use a level of force and when it's never appropriate. One of the things that I worked hard to get inserted into the discussion was that it's every cop's responsibility to make sure every other cop is following the law. And if they aren't, stopping it or reporting it. Nobody is above the law, including the people who enforce it. Carol mentioned the unemployment stuff, and it's very disheartening to know that there are still people that have not seen an unemployment check for 6 months, and a lot of it is due to the appeals process, which is definitely not geared to deal with the amount of work that came in as a result of everybody getting laid off in the early stages of the pandemic. So we're kind of in discussions with the Commissioner of Employment and Training about trying to shift people into that. Unfortunately, a lot of people are sitting around with no money in their pocket because their old employer won't take the time to notify the Department of Labor about what their actual situation was. So tomorrow on my schedule is to call them up and start to have them discern how many people are not getting checks because of something they did and how many people are not getting checks because of something their employer fails to do, and see if we can't get some kind of accommodation made for the people that are unnecessarily waiting for relief through no fault of their own. I think that's all I'll say unless people have questions.
Question?
I see a question, Sylvia.
Yeah, what was the number of the bill on use of force, please?
Sylvia, I don't recognize them by number. I recognize them by name. So I will look it up. I'll look it up and I'll tell you before we get off here.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that work.
Yeah, and Bob, follow-up question on same topic. I saw a story on the news earlier today about the use of force policy that the Vermont State Police is developing. How are those two efforts being coordinated?
Actually, Jeff, that's a good question. And the central focus of the bill is to make one universal policy for all police in Vermont. They all go through the same police academy to be certified at this point anyway. We'd like to see that function divided a little bit more so that somebody that lives in Burlington doesn't have to uproot their family for 4 months and go live in Pittsford, particularly women and minorities and new immigrants, new Americans who might well like to serve on police force. So that's the area we're trying to get coordinated so that if you work in Milton or you work in Brattleboro, you have the same expectations, you have the same basic training facility, and that quite frankly, you're screened a little bit more for your appropriateness for the job too. So yeah.
So have you had testimony from the State Police Command on this project yet?
Yeah, it's the bill. The bill is on its way.
Okay. Thank you.
Time to move on, Jeff.
Well, we seem to be doing okay here. So I see that Martine is representing our school board. So Martine, would you like to jump in and go ahead?
Absolutely. Hello, everybody. Well, where do I start? COVID is obviously making education very complicated at the moment. And can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. As you know, we started off the school year in what's called phase 2 with some guidelines that were set by the AOE, Dan French, and the governor, as well as Dr. Levine. And, you know, I think I can say that things have been going, fairly well. I think there's been a low incidence of transmission in schools. So you probably heard, I believe it was announced yesterday that we'll be moving into phase 3. So that just gives schools more leeway in terms of how many kids can be in school and how often, and relaxes some of the guidelines in terms of social distancing and gathering and things like that. So we're moving into stage 3. There has not been an announcement in our district as to what that's going to mean yet. I would imagine that will be forthcoming in the near future. And I would imagine that at some point in the future, if we stay in phase 3, there will be some changes in terms of how we deliver instruction. So be on the lookout for information around that. You've probably all heard that the high school is closed at the moment, not because of COVID, but because of high PCB levels extremely high PCB levels that were found in the tech center, and then higher than state standard in the high school, lower than EPA standard, but higher than state standards for the high school. So out of an abundance of caution and some guidance from the state health office, it was decided to close the high school. And at this time, while the building is closed, there is going to be more testing, and there will also be some investigative work as to exactly where the contamination is coming from. And then there'll be next steps in terms of how to remove it and move forward. So that's where we're at with that issue. I did speak with Marty Spalding over the weekend. He's the head of maintenance, and we had a good discussion about the PCB issue. And because I was just really curious as to, number one, why is the EPA national standard so much higher than the Vermont standard? I did read the little brochure that explains it, and I still don't understand it. It didn't really do a great job of explaining it. So, I can certainly share that with folks if they're interested in reading it, but it's not super informative. But I did ask questions like, had the ballasts been removed out of the lighting in the tech center? Because I know that the old ballasts were full of PCBs, and apparently they had all been removed years ago. So, it's still kind of a little bit of a mystery as to where exactly those contaminants are coming from. So stay tuned. I'm sure there will be more unfolding as we go into the next couple weeks and months. I can say myself that I've mentioned to a few people, I am in a high school. I work in a high school in Essex that does have, we are doing the hybrid model there. And as much as my heart goes out to the Burlington community and it's so sad that our high school is closed. And I certainly don't want to diminish people's feelings in that regard. The hybrid model is not ideal by any means, and it may be marginally better than being fully remote, but there are a lot of struggles with the hybrid model as well. And it's not a perfect solution. So this is my opinion, and I'm not speaking for the school board, but I do like to share that perspective with folks as well. The superintendent, you may have heard, did start a safety task force. I believe that is closed, but I also get the sense that if there were folks who really wanted to be on that safety task force, that they probably could ask to be on it. And it's a task force that's examining the school resource officers, their roles in our schools, how effective they are at what they do, their interactions with students and so forth. So if anyone's really interested in that, there is information on the website, the district website. And I wanted to mention, I just got an email from Autumn Bangora saying that this Sunday, actually, at the 27th, from 3:30 to 5 at Champlain Elementary School outside, there's going to be a tent There is going to be a BSD and BTV community leader meet and greet event. So it's an opportunity to meet Superintendent Flanagan and have some discussions with some other community leaders who will be there, including, it looks like Patrick Brown, who's the executive director of the Greater Burlington Multicultural Resource Center and UVM lecturer. So I will make sure that gets out on Front Porch Forum so people have that information. But it sounds like it'll be interesting. And I'm happy to answer any questions if I can. Hello, Ian. Oh, go ahead, Jeff.
Oh, let's see. Any questions? I don't see any hands, so I'll jump in and try to.
No, I saw Ian Bleakney.
I see a hand.
Or maybe Bob Cooper.
No, Ian Blake.
Yeah, my hand was up. That's okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, Martine, thanks. I'm a teacher in Burlington, and we are doing the hybrid model, and I echo your sentiment about how challenging it can be. It's not, in some ways, it's the worst of all possible worlds. My question is about the high school. So obviously, there's going to have to be some abatement done at the high school. And my question about the abatement is, with the redesign of the high school happening, that's also in the works. Is the abatement, does that have to happen before they can begin any of the reconstruction or redesign of the high school, or can it happen concurrently? It seems like there's no kids there right now. Couldn't they get in and just do the abatement and start the redesign project now, or what are the guidelines? Do you know anything about that?
I do know a little bit. I went to the BCOC meeting earlier this week, I believe it was, or late last week. They're all blending together. And I also read Mike Fisher's upcoming North Avenue News piece where he's going to talk about that exact issue. So that's a really good question. So the question is, do they at this point work on the abatement and really try to push forward the dates of the re-envisioning of the renovating the high school and try to get it sort of done all at once? Or do they, try to do it in two separate steps? So that is the question that's being posed. I don't believe there's an answer at this point, but it definitely is on people's minds since we are fully remote at the moment. Is there a way that we can move the renovation up so that the two events could be concurrent and we could get things done sooner? So it's a good question. Stay tuned. I'm thinking that is an important one that will need to be addressed obviously soon. So I'll try to keep you posted, Ian, and I will be going to those BCOC meetings henceforth.
Martine, just to sort of jump in and sort of help out a little bit with the sort of confusion about the discrepancies between, the health risk assessment numbers and between EPA and the health department. And I know that Sylvia is probably well aware of this from a lot of work that she's done, but two of the biggest factors that make those discrepancies, is how many orders of magnitude the agency applies to, health prevention, whether you're talking about, 1 in 10,000 or 1 in a million sort of safety factors that are built into those numbers. And also, what are the actual health endpoints that that particular agency is trying to protect against? And so the Vermont State Health Department, I know, applies much more stringent criteria than EPA does, which, so when you do the math on those, risk assessments, that's how you end up with different endpoint numbers.
Thank you, Jeff. That's good. That's good to hear it in those terms. I appreciate that. Yeah, I've heard from a couple of good sources that there was a study done on some schools in Vermont in 2013, and then that there were quite a few schools that did come above the Vermont standard for PCBs. So I am curious about that because obviously those schools did not have to close down, and I'm wondering, maybe Jeff, do you know more about that?
No, I am trying to look into that myself. And so well, part of the other answer there is, I think the fact that the school has been closed, also, you know, the degree that you get air turnover circulation in those buildings are going to affect sort of the residual numbers, you know, and also, you know, whether you're applying them as an occupational standard for a certain number of hours a day, or whether they're treating them like a residential standard, which would be more of like a lifetime standard. So those are a couple of other variables and that decision making.
Yeah, okay, well, that's interesting. I do know that when the test was done at the high school, the fans were on, the air was circulating,
Okay.
so for what that's worth.
All right. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Anything else?
Martine, in your research, did they say why it took so long for us to learn this, you know?
Yeah, so I had a discussion with Claire about that early on. I don't think it's necessarily that it took a long time for us to find out. My understanding is that the testing was supposed to be done in March. And then of course we got hit by a global pandemic. So they took those dates and they kind of pushed them down the road. And then between getting the state and these people who were doing the test from out of state to come in and get coordinated, it took a while for the test to happen. And then again, just the coordination between an out of state organization and a state organization, it took longer than you would have hoped to get that information kind of collated and then out to the public. But I know the timing was very unfortunate.
And is it an annual test?
No. PCB tests are not a standard at all. The only reason that we had to do this PCB test was because of the re-envisioning project. There's the rub. I mean, it would be interesting if they were doing PCB tests on all the schools in Vermont, because I do think we would find that quite a few schools are above the Vermont standard, which is a scary thought. But again, like the test in 2013 showed that to be the case.
Okay. Thank you. It looks like we have a question or comment from Mark.
Yes, thank you. And I've discussed this with Martine already, sort of offline, but with the PCB levels and the need for abatement at the high school, I had a concern that it would increase the budget of the re-envisioning project. And I was wondering, not to put our legislative delegation on the spot, if there's any chance that they could do some work to see if there's any state money to help with the remediation of those things. I don't know if they want to answer that, or I just want to take it off for consideration.
I think in the interest of integrity of the schedule, Mark, I'm going to suggest that we follow up on that offline so we can move on to the city council folks.
Can I say something really quickly?
Yep.
Just Mark, I'll follow up with you, but it was brought up at the BCOC meeting that we are definitely in the running, and it looks very good that we will get a grant of up to $100,000 for help with this. It's not $100,000 is probably not going to cover it all, but it's better than nothing. So yeah, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, city council folks. Sarah Carpenter, would you like to lead off?
Goodness, one of the things I discovered about being in city council is when they do the roll call vote, I am always first, and
I'll
that
keep
is
it in mind for next time.
an interesting position to be in when you have had a lot of conversation and fairly intense conversation, as you have all seen over this last month. It has been a lot of hours, a lot of intensity. I'm hoping we're able to be moving to a new place. We've spent many hours, as you know, dealing with the police issues. There's been a lot of hurt and a lot of harm, and we need to move on. And I'm feeling comfortable that we're at a place where we can do that. I was very involved with a resolution we passed that mandates us to look at a charter change around governance of the police. And as we've explained in the past, it's sort of an anomaly that the police chief is the only person within city governments that can hire and fire. The council and the mayor cannot. So we need to look at governance of that department closely. And as part of that, we've asked the police commission to come back to the council in November with effectively a list or laundry list of the impediments that they see around governance and discipline. So there's a lot of work going on. Councilor Poulin can talk about some of the work that's happening with the joint committee that's reviewing stuff from our racial justice resolution. There's a lot of work going, and I hope we're in a place where we're going to be moving forward. That really has taken most of our month. As you again see from the paper, there's activity, legal activity around City Place. I don't have anything to add, but you know, we're keeping regularly updated on that. And again, we need to move forward. That even though it's been discussed in the terms of a lawsuit, it very much keeps the door open for mediation, and that's kind of the route that we're looking at. You may have seen that at our last meeting, we passed a version on ranked choice voting just for city councilors. I feel it was very rushed and not the right time, and it's going to be an interesting ballot in March. You're going to vote one way for the mayor, one way for the city councilors, and another way for the school councilors. So I would encourage this NPA to maybe have a session on that sometime between now and March. The other kind of things we've had a lot of conversation about is just our concerns about VVM students coming back and control over that. I think you saw that we reduced the open hours for bars to 11, and that's having some good impact. We've also reduced the number of people that can gather at sort of home parties. So we're keeping our fingers crossed, and we put a lot of pressure, I think, on UVM to do it right. So far, so good, but we need to keep our eyes really focused on that. Another little news, and I see Mark's here, but for those of you or us that live near Letty Park, the Parks Department, which Mark sits on, as well as Alex Farrell, did vote to reduce the hours of open hours for Letty to 9:30, which would make it consistent with the rest of the parks. And they're exploring closing it off at night, essentially putting gates there. So I think that will really help. And they've also increased the ticketing, or I guess I'm gonna call it ticketing. Look, telling cars they can't park there. So there's more work to be done, but the Parks Department has responded well. So I'm very, very pleased around that. I'm just trying to think what other things we've been involved at. I guess that's, I'm a new member of the tax abatement committee. I don't know, that's a difficult committee, and we've had our first couple of meetings, and as is Councilor Paulino, and just to say that we've been muddling through it, and we, as you all remember, allowed citizens to defer their payments. I guess that one other thing, and this is more of a reminder that, and when Representative Odie was talking about that, the water department has a survey out for everybody to respond to water quality issues in Burlington. So I just encourage you to follow through on that. And they're going to have a couple sessions at Letty Park. So I think that was posted on Front Porch Forum.
Okay, Bridget, did you have a question for Sarah?
I did. And I can't mute my computer, but that's my F-35s overhead. Sarah, thank you for that. On the first point issue you raised about the firing of a police officer and the role of a mayor, versus the chief of police. Generally speaking, do you know if Burlington is unique in same size types of cities in the United States that has that approach? And my follow-up question is the city of Burlington or the mayor himself conducting a survey of how other cities are changing their city charters vis-a-vis police violence?
Yes to the latter. I don't know how Burlington compares. I think we are unusual in the state of Vermont. I don't know if we're unusual outside. I have an impression that it runs sometimes the result of union negotiations of many years ago. I think it has a validity in the sense that you don't want a city council or a mayor interfering with a police investigation, but I think it is antiquated. I think the sense is that they really need much stronger citizen oversight. And my sense is with the departments that have done the work, that are being used as examples, that's where they've done the work. And they're hiring a consultant as we speak. There's an RFP, and Councillor Poulin has a little more detail on that, I'm sure, to guide them in this process. And I know the mayor is very focused on getting external advice in the sense of, what's worked other places in a town, particularly a university town, because we've got some nuance. So yes, we are doing that.
Okay, so before we move on, I just want everybody to sort of be aware that I'm going to continue with the city council segment because it doesn't appear that our next set of presenters are logged in. So I am watching the clock, but we're going to continue with since we're having a conversation, we're going to continue in this vein. So it looks like Erica, you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Jeff. I am deeply concerned with the actions that I'm seeing being taken by the city council in a number of areas. One, as a property owner, the fact that the charter change committee is trying to get rid of no cause evictions, which essentially means that I, as a property owner, am in one further way in Burlington not allowed to use my property as I see fit. So if for some reason I needed to move into my own property because, say, a disaster happened in another area and I wanted to take control of one of my own units that I own, that I would not be able to do that. And I find that deeply concerning. There's just so many areas that our Burlington city councilors believe that they have more of a right to tell me what I'm allowed to do with my personal property than I do. And it just is continuing. It's very disturbing. It's very disturbing that you're firing police officers using taxpayer dollars. It's very concerning that you're putting limitations on gatherings, and yet you're allowing protesters to remain and harass people on North Avenue. The hypocrisy, I just find really astonishing, particularly coming from city councilors who have guaranteed government contracts, or they're
Erica, what's your question?
Suffer the consequences of it. Linda, you're not the person in charge of this meeting. Jeff is. So if he wants to shut me off, he's welcome to.
Erica, on just cause eviction, I can answer that. We have and are doing a lot of research on that. There are 4 entire states: the state of Oregon, the state of California, the state of New Jersey, and to a lesser degree, the state of New Hampshire have just cause eviction things. Yes, you can move in there if you own the apartment. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of myths floating around. So I encourage you, we're in the process of preparing more detailed information, but I encourage you to do your own.
You're in the process of figuring out more ways that you can take our rights away from us.
And provide homes for our residents.
Okay.
By taking from me. That's wrong, Sarah. That's stealing.
Okay. Thank you, Erica. let's see. So Franklin or Ali, which of you would like to join this
There.
conversation?
Sure. I can't speak to just cause eviction. That's Sarah's sort of bag. She's on the CDNR and has been seeing it all the way through, along with Brian Pine. I would say is probably the foremost expert in, you know, housing in Burlington. You know, I think that you want to know what we've been doing. I think we've basically primarily, as Sarah said, been meeting way more than usual. I would say for every city meeting, we've probably met outside of the meeting like 5 or 6 times in a really concerned, thoughtful way of trying to figure out our way by, you know, making a big statement. And I think we're not done. All we did Monday was resolve the 3 officer issue. My understanding is there's going to be more happening very soon. And there's going to be all kinds of changes announced. I thought it was this week, so we'll see. So to be determined. I know people are concerned about. Many people have reached out to us about the presence of the protesters. I do think that we've done a very good job of balancing the protesters' right to protest and just be out, you know, exercising their First Amendment rights with, you know, the fact that you can't camp at a public park, obviously. And we're gonna hopefully resolve that issue soon. You know, but we're only one side of the equation, so I think that one is a question mark as to how, if at all, will the city be able to resolve that? You know, it is getting colder, so that also may play into it. I do think that COVID has had an effect on people in terms of their ability to, you know, we're all online at home and really reading the news, so it's just it's an interesting time right now. And so to Sarah's point, she referenced the joint committee. We're basically hiring an expert to do the kind of work that I feel like a lot of people want to see, which is hire an expert to just deal with community outreach. So that's been done. We created an RFP. We haven't received it back, and there's going to be a subcommittee reviewing that RFP. The second proposal for a second expert is more of a top-down assessment, like a, you know, former police officer, former prosecutor type that can look at BPD managerial from almost like the way I see it's like an HR perspective, and give us an opinion as to, you know, do we have too many officers? Do we need more? Are we patrolling the streets the right way? Do we need more foot patrol? Do we need to send people out and, you know, in 2 cars, 2 officers per car as opposed to 1? You know, could we use 4 more social workers or none at all? So we're doing that now. And John Murad has been very involved in the joint committee and is drafting the RFP. So it's been a very collaborative process, a pretty remarkable committee of people, many people of color. So it's just very, very cool. And we've had great conversations, and I think we're off to a good start considering it's only like our 4th meeting. As to the other major ticket, I think it was ranked choice voting. Obviously, everybody here, all the counselors voted consistently, and not to put it on the ballot. It's an interesting issue. I think we all had different reasons to support it or not. My personal issue was timing, and I just think we're in the middle of a pandemic, and I'm not sure that making it hard, and we don't even know how we're going to vote in March, as Sarah said. So to make it a little bit more, to make it even more confusing the following election, let's say it passes, I'm just not sure it's the right time. And that's the only thing. We should be looking for solutions. And, you know, I'm concerned about an economic downturn once the benefits that we've been provided by the federal aid and even to some extent municipal aid, once that runs out. So I think we need to be careful until we see how long this period will last where restaurants aren't reopening. So those are the 2 big things. like I said, policing, I think you're going to see more announcements that will be more comprehensive. But, you know, policing is just one sector of what I truly believe is the protesters' call to action. You know, it's a big ask, and it's not, policing is just one of them. So I would defer anybody to Taisha Green. She's been amazing. I would invite the NPA to have her speak. She's the example of the person that sort of like has the greater mission in mind and can speak to what are we looking at to do, what are the possibilities. You know, there's $1 million allocated for her to use, and I think it'd be good for you guys to know what exactly she's going to present a budget at some point for that $1 million. And my understanding is that it's close to being finalized, but I haven't seen it. Hasn't come to us officially, but so that's pretty exciting too.
Bridget, I see you have a hand up.
No.
Oh, okay, then, okay, I think there you go. Thank you. Any other questions for Franklin? Okay, Ali, are you
Yes.
there?
I'm here. You hear me, right?
Yep, I can see you too.
Yes. Thank you again for bringing us together. I think this is important, and I think wanted to say a special thank you to Jenna for bringing the baby today. I think it just brought up some light here. But extend also the thank you to Robert Bristol Johnson for his hard work and advocacy around the ranked choice voting issue. And I think I'm just calling for also my constituents to really, we're not expert on many things, but we rely on you, on your feedbacks, on what you think in order for us to make the right decision. You know, initially ranked choice voting, I was in support to put it on the ballot, but I think the way that it was brought up after a veto, we tried to sustain the veto, it did not work. Bringing it back was not a good idea. And I propose for my colleague to bring it back in January, maybe, which is 2021, to not rush. But people didn't want to listen, and it passed 7-5. And I'm glad the city councils in the North District did not vote for it. But thank you, Robert, for that. Also, thank you to Sylvia for all the letters you have sent on behalf of your church about what's going on in downtown, as well as Battery Park, about the police issue. And I think all of this we are experiencing as a community could have been prevented, you know, by taking the right action at the right time, but we missed to do it. And I think it's unfortunate now that no one would want to take the blame about what's happening. And the city councilors here in front of us know that I brought up an amendment seeking for the council to recognize that we made an error. We made a big mistake by not taking action sooner. But for some reason, about like if it passes, I will vote against the resolution. You know, which I think is again the lack of governance happening here in the city. You know, this should not be the way. And reducing the police through attrition, I think also has a big part of what is happening here too. The process that I propose is now what this joint committee is trying to do. I think it's not good governance, and it's never going to be good governance. We definitely need some change. So earlier, Bridget talked about the F-35s that flew. We all heard them. And as it is becoming more and more clear that we don't have a clear schedule about this F-35. Been in communication with Jean Richard, and I believe including Franklin Polino, the district city council, in requesting that. But they sent us an outdated schedule that was from April of last year or this year, I believe. And today, I just sent an email to both Representative Hooper after a great post, you know, that you did on Front Porch Forum, as well as Carol Oddy, to request such a thing from the governor. Can we have this accurate schedule posted on our website, as well as the municipalities that surround the airport that are affected by the noise? Yes, so on Saturday at 2 p.m., Lorry Lane neighborhood, there has been some quality of life issues, and we've been working on it for the past couple of weeks. There has been some improvements, but at 2 o'clock Saturday, we want to convene the neighborhood and to just talk about next step and also go through some basically people that need to apologize to the full community. Hard stuff happening. I cannot talk about the details until we all show up at that meeting right now. So in terms of updates, and I think that's it. And yeah, F-35s. Sorry, it's the F-35s. But I think I'm done. Thank you, and looking for questions.
Robert, we will go to you momentarily.
Okay.
Okay, and then we're gonna proceed with our regularly scheduled material. Robert?
Okay, thank you. So thank you for your votes on the ranked choice voting. This may sound odd to some, but some of you know me. This might sound odd to maybe Chris Pearson who's visiting, but I am an avid supporter of ranked choice voting. I want us to do it right, and I want ranked choice voting to keep its promises, because if it doesn't, it's really not a reform. And so we can afford to do without ranked choice voting for a little longer in an effort to get it right. I just want to remind everyone, including our city councilors, that like the last resolution, this resolution could get vetoed. And if you want the mayor to veto it, I think now is exactly the time to send email to the mayor's office about that, because he has to make a decision in the coming 2 weeks before the next council meeting. And if he does do that, it might. This is so important. It's like redistricting in 2013. If you remember in 2013, there was a North versus South problem, and the new North End was, in a sense, being threatened. In a sense, we were going to become a big Ward 4 with 3 councilors, and that would have meant that we would have had a multi-winner race on the odd years, and those are different. None of the other wards would have had that. And there was this back and forth between maps drawn by my friend Andy Montrol and other folks, and eventually the city decided to get a redistricting committee. And the redistricting committee decided to crowdsource this thing to get other ideas so that we could explore other options. And this ranked choice voting charter change is just as important. And if we had such a committee and we did explore that, we could have more options than just 2, essentially keeping the same system we have now, which is first past the post, or returning to exactly the same system that we repealed 10 years ago. And we shouldn't have just be limited to just simply that choice. And so this is why myself, as a big avid supporter of ranked choice voting, I cheer my counselors for voting nay on that. And I supported the mayor's veto before. And if he vetoes it again, I would support that. And I hope that other persons that might not want exactly the same ranked IRV that we had 10 years ago return to contact Moreau about possibly vetoing it.
Okay.
I'm done.
All right, thank you, Robert. And as Sarah suggested to the steering committee that we revisit this topic in an educational way at a future meeting. So we will be in touch. And so I want to quickly go to Bob Hooper's raised hand, and then Jenna indicates that our Everyone Eats speaker is with us, so we're going to move on after that. Bob?
Robert has good points, and there are two bills listed on my background here that answer the question that Sylvia had. Or one is the actual bill we were talking about, another is a related one. Take out the dash, put in a dot, and you'll have it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Got it.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Okay, we'll jump around. So, Brittany, are you prepared to jump in and tell us about Everyone Eats?
I am. Thank you so much for having me this evening. I'm really excited
Welcome.
to share the opportunities that have come to us through Everyone Eats. I am a Burlington resident of 10 years, and I am a representative from the Chittenden County hub of Everyone Eats. Everyone Eats is a statewide program that has hubs covering almost the entire state of Vermont, serving meals to folks who have experienced food insecurity or who are otherwise food insecure due to COVID-19. We are here in this meeting today. Thank you, Jenna, because we are looking for a collaborative, creative approach in Chittenden County to address food insecurity outside the realm of the usual charitable food system. So I'm asking folks in this group to think creatively and collaboratively about what resources we have in Chittenden County to address food insecurity outside of, your food shelf or your usual programming through a number of network partners like A New Place and COTS. We have a substantial budget to work with. I have way more supply, which means many, many restaurants are available to make hundreds of meals per day, per week. And we just need help getting the meals out into the community who we know is experiencing food insecurity right now, which is likely to accelerate as we get closer to the end of the year. So my email address is brittany@skinnypancake.com. You're welcome to get in touch with me, and hopefully there'll be notes that go out after this meeting and I can share some info with Jenna. But we're looking for creative, collaborative ways to get meals into our community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions for Brittany? So how is the distribution process working for you?
We are working in collaboration with the Intervale Center. We're pulling resources from our Skinny Pancake fleet. So we have multiple vans and different staff members who are driving meals all around. We're serving up to 2,000 meals this week, and we're gaining momentum to get to about 3,200 next week. We're also working with Localvore, which is a Burlington-based tech agency, to do a voucher program statewide that's going to be available throughout the entire state as soon as the second week in October. They are working with Sevka, who is the grant manager for the program, to develop that, and that will be able to reach thousands of Vermonters in Chittenden County and tens of thousands across the state.
All right, thank you. So, so Jenna, if we can get the website information, then we can post that on our either our Front Porch Forum or on our North End Facebook page.
Absolutely. And huge thanks to Brittany and everyone at the Shiftmeals Everyone Eats team. It's been a huge undertaking and it's like triple win of supporting local restaurants, supporting local farmers, and getting meals to folks, like delicious meals to folks across the county. So it's really exciting. And also thank you to our state representatives who helped to support this program. I think we're the first in the country to move with it, and people are like, we're on the Today Show because of it. So it's really exciting. Brittany, thank you for taking the time to join us.
I have a question, Jeff.
Yes.
Brittany, are you looking for like locations where people could come and just pick up the meals? Could you explain that a little bit more?
Sure. So we have a number of different ways that we've been distributing meals. Some examples would be Town Meadow Community Senior Center out in Essex, where there's a program manager there. We drop off 100 meals, they distribute to the folks who live on site. In other situations, we're bringing our food truck to a Burlington Housing Authority complex such as Decker Towers and distributing meals for folks who live there. We still have maintained our Shiftmeals model, which is a online form. Folks sign up, we go down, we set up an Easy Up every Friday, and we distribute meals to folks who have signed up. So there's so many creative lenses and ways we can get meals into the community. So if anyone has space, my supervisor, Jean Hamilton, was recently coming around to this idea today about public libraries. Like maybe there's an accessible format there where there's a large yard, or there's folks who could, you know, plug a freezer in inside and hold some frozen meals. We have a alternative program in central Vermont. We have a street team that's serving unhoused folks all around Montpelier and Barrie. So it's really who has infrastructure or any kind of program and volunteers who can help, and we can work in any kind of system.
So is there income-based criteria, or can anybody participate?
So the criteria for eligibility is simply someone needs to admit and say verbally or check a box on a form that they could benefit from a meal today. So we're leading folks to yes. This program is called Everyone Eats. We want everyone to eat. We think that everyone is eligible. We have all been impacted by COVID-19, whether it's emotionally, financially. Our ability to put food on the table for our families has been strained because our jobs have made it more difficult, or we simply are afraid to walk into a grocery store because we live with someone immunocompromised. There is really not a lot of limitations to this grant, and there's no need to show income eligibility. There's no proof of that, which is a really amazing way to sort of close the gap, which we know there's so many folks who are just at that line, who are just above the minimum wage, and they're able to access these programs where maybe they were just making 25 cents an hour too much before, but now they can access these meals.
Can you give me an idea of what kind of meals? Are there like vegetarian meals and or?
Sure. So at Shiftmeals, we have about 10 recipes. We make curries. We do a chana masala over rice. We do a chicken stew with mashed potatoes, a homemade marinara sauce with pasta. We're working with Blissbee, who's been offering grain bowls. That's one of the Farmhouse Group restaurants. So it's like a grain bowl with fresh vegetables, some hard-boiled eggs or chicken. We're working with Pingala, who is the quintessential vegan comfort food restaurant in Winooski. They're doing like a cashew mac and cheese, and I'm trying to think how many other restaurants. Butch and Babes is putting together a fried chicken with some veggies and some deep mustard greens and roasted potatoes. Having this opportunity with Everyone Eats has allowed me as a restaurateur to bring in all these different restaurants. So there's really just so many options and so many different palettes. So we're just doing our best to match up locations with the meal types that folks are willing and would be likely to eat.
Thank you.
I'd like to get back to Bridget.
Brittany, thank you very much for that. I had read about your efforts, and I'm very impressed. I think I heard you say that currently you deliver 3,000 meals a week. Is that correct?
Across Chittenden County, Shiftmeals has a continued contract with the food bank. And so some of those meals are the number from our food bank contract, and then the rest are from Everyone Eats. Yeah.
So my question is, if Brittany was queen for the day and you had all the resources that you need, how many more meals do you think that community might need?
Well, our budget that I push for means that we can get to 6,000 a week and maintain that number through the end of the year till December 10th. And so we could double the work that we're doing now and still be funded through the ACCD grant.
So 6,000 meals a week could be consumed by those in need in our community.
In Chittenden County across, correct.
Wow. That's a headline, Brittany. That's a headline. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Good question.
Brittany, I heard you mention distributing from libraries. I think that's a great idea. In the New North End, we don't have a library, so I was thinking of the Miller Center. I see it's opening up for some sports, and it's kind of centrally located, or you know, the hockey rink down from here as well.
And you know, the Alliance Church is parking lot. It's being used to distribute the meals through the school system to kids. And that's a huge parking lot, and you can actually drive around behind the building too. So that might be another location. Or also the Heineberg Senior Center, they do have freezers there. So that might be another place.
We are working with Heineberg. Thank you for the ideas on the Miller Center and the Alliance Church.
Very good.
Can I just say at the Heineberg Center, in case folks don't, they've sort of shifted, but on Thursdays, and they're targeting seniors, but you can go Thursday morning to the center and pick up meals, and they have donated food. Hannaford's and some others are donating food. So if you know, particularly an older person, they should go there on Thursday morning, and there is food. And I volunteer there, so if you need more info, let me know, or just call the center.
All right, back to you, Bridget. Or, okay, can you?
Am I doing something wrong about not unraising my hand, or?
Yes, your
Sorry.
hand is upward.
I think you have a, don't you have a lower button?
Click the button, click it again, and it'll go off.
Better?
All right. Okay, well, just make a face next time if you still want to say something, okay? All right, so I think I can get us right back on schedule here. So there were a few items related to absentee balloting that I wanted to share with folks. And so the first thing that I had done is I put the link to the District 6-1 and Chittenden 6-1 and 6-2, the sample ballots in the agenda. And then Front Porch Forum removed the link. So unfortunately, the agenda that you received from Front Porch Forum doesn't have an active link. So if you want to look at the ballots, you can go to the City of Burlington website, go to under the department section, go to the city clerk, click on the elections tab, and then the ballots and the warnings, you can find those there on the city webpage. Some of the other sort of miscellaneous information I wanted to share is I learned that the city clerk's office is in the process of purchasing 3 drop boxes that they're going to place at various locations around the cities for returning absentee ballots. I know the drop box model is one that I think the state of Oregon uses. So at this point in time, it looks like there will be 1 drop box at City Hall. There will be 1 drop box in the north end of Burlington and 1 down in the south end. And the north and south end drop boxes, those locations haven't been decided yet. So and let's see, those will be installed and available sometime in mid-October. So I'm sure the city will probably do some PR related to those when those get installed. The other options, of course, ballots, started mailing ballots this week. So it looks like the schedule of mailing ballots to all the various towns started this week on Tuesday and should be complete by October 1st. So if you don't immediately get one, don't panic. You can either wait or call the city clerk's office to check on when Burlington is actually going to mail theirs. I don't know.
Jeff, I think from what I understand, they're starting and doing it alphabetical order by town. So places like Addison and so on are getting it first, but Burlington should be fairly soon because where we are in the alphabet.
Yeah, okay, well, all right, thanks for that. So maybe by the end of the week, we'll be well into the Bs. Let's see. If you choose not to return your ballot by mail, you can return it to City Hall during the clerk's office during working hours, which are fairly limited. So City Hall business hours are Monday from 8 to 12:30, and then Wednesday afternoon from 1 to 4:30. So I think that's kind of the
And you can
highlight.
also bring your ballot to, if you get it,
Well,
your ballot in the mail, you can also bring it to the polls, right?
of course. Yep. Yes. And then it will get counted, processed on election day. Otherwise, the ones that get mailed in ahead of time will all get processed by the ward clerks and in the week or so prior to election. I don't know, any particular questions related to
I
that?
just wanted to, having the new Dropbox option, I had talked to Amy Bovey about that, and I think that'll be a real help. And I think they're just needing to assure that it's going to be in a very secure place, and logistics of picking it up every day, but it is actually done in a lot of places. So, as soon as we know, we'll let everybody know. And I think that'll be a really good option for folks.
Okay, yep, thank you. Carol, I see you have a question.
Yeah, I just want to say that if you, if voters lose track of their ballots, or if they use them and then they just aren't in good shape anymore, they decide they've changed their mind or whatever, they can go to the polls on voting day and they can get a ballot there and vote there. So.
Yes, so my recommendation would be that, if you make a mistake on your ballot or it just gets beat up before election day, the least complicated option is to at least bring it with you so that you can trade the old ballot for a new ballot. Would be a much more straightforward process. Carol?
Yes, but you don't need to. You can walk in. They'll know whether you voted or not, and they'll know that you haven't, and they'll give you a ballot.
Right, but the checklist this time around, everybody is going to be marked as having received an absentee ballot.
True. That's true.
I think the process is that if you don't return your ballot, you can sign a certificate of lost or unused ballot, and then you can go ahead and vote as normal on election day. That's my understanding of how that process works. Okay. All right, so I guess we're getting ready to move into the candidate forum section. And by my reckoning, looks like we have 6 candidates with us this evening. So, Madam Timekeeper, if you want to run the math, and how about if we start out by giving everybody 5 minutes, and then that leaves us a good bit of time for question and answer afterwards.
Yeah, that would be 10 minutes of questions at the end.
Yeah, does that sound like an appropriate way to go?
You're saying 30 minutes of candidate presentations and 10 minutes of question and answer for the entire group. Is that what is it?
Well, so each candidate gets 5 minutes.
That would be 30 minutes.
Correct. And then if somebody wants to ask the particular candidate a question, then go ahead and raise
And we have 10 minutes allocated for that.
an additional 10 minutes at the end. Linda, you got your stopwatch ready?
I don't know about anybody else, but 5 minutes is a long time to just sort of talk off the cuff about our campaign. I would love more of an opportunity to get questions and hear what people are about. If you are all amenable to that, that's just my 2 cents.
It's what I was alluding to also.
And we can end early. We don't have to go to 9.
Right. So you don't have to talk through your entire 5 minutes. If you say what you would like to say and then have a conversation with the group at that point, I think that's even more informative. So we've got all the time we allocated for this, so we can be flexible. So so like Sarah Carpenter said on the city council roll call, I guess we're just going to go through the ballot in alphabetical order. So it looks like Tom Chittenden, you ready to go first?
Sure, I'd be glad to. So,
Thank you.
Thank you. So I don't have 5 minutes to talk about myself, so I'll probably just use about 2. So I appreciate that, Erica. Made me feel more comfortable not using the whole 5. So I'm Thomas Chittenden. I actually used to live in Ward 4. Right after college, I was in Lakes View Estates. I lived there with some friends. I have very fond memories growing up, going out to the Ethan Allen cinemas, what we call the cheap seats. So I have a lot of connections to the north end of Burlington from growing up in this Chittenden County area. I'm running for state senate. I'll give you a little bit of my background. I'm currently a 3rd term currently serving South Burlington City Councilor. I also am at the University of Vermont. I have some leadership roles there, and I've had about 5 years at Green Mountain Transit, where I also had a leadership role on that body. I decided to run, and I think I gave this spiel to all this spiel. I gave this speech to this group probably about 3 or 4 weeks ago during the primary. So I hope I'm not repeating myself too much, but my standard statement as to why I'm running is I have not heard for the past couple of years enough of our elected leaders advocating for more opportunities for current and future Vermonters to stay here, live here, work here, and thrive here. It's that demographic challenge. I keep hearing some of the candidates at the lieutenant governor and governor's race highlighting the attention to. So I've got some ideas on how we can do things to address that demographic challenge, to grow Vermont, to create more opportunities for people to stay here. We're looking at, for the first time in our state's history, a potential decreasing or declining state population with the census this year. Got some ideas on how to address that through transportation infrastructure priorities, through getting our VSC system to collaborate more with the University of Vermont. I look at the Vermont Futures Project. They talk about permit reform. So I just want to give air to the idea of having more opportunities here in the state. The other reason why I decided to throw my hat in the ring, as well as some other ones that you can find on my website, is regionalization. In my role in the South Burlington City Council, I see a lot of opportunities for us to collaborate across these town boundaries. And I'd like to see state and county leadership motivating us to do so. I look at things like stormwater, sewer, regional planning, something as simple as trash collection. We could do trash collection better in Vermont and in Chittenden County if we had more county and state leadership motivating us to do so. And so that's where and you can also look at policing of data or police data and how our sheriffs could have a larger role there too. So I just want to bring that voice there. Also the climate, I'm passionate about addressing our climate change crisis. Got some ideas on how to do that as well. That ties into some of the growth opportunities and how to pay for the transportation infrastructure. I don't think that's 5 minutes. I'd be happy to, I don't know if you want to take questions now during my 5 minutes or just give that back to the whole and we can take questions at the end. But those are the main points I usually make in this. I look to you, Jeff, as to how you want me to handle the remainder of my time.
Well, I'd certainly like to give, if anybody has specific questions for you, I'd like them to have the chance to chat with you now rather than put it in the soup at the end. So anybody have any specific questions for Tom? All right, well then maybe we may have another sort of round robin opportunity at the end. So thank you very much.
Sorry to bother, but I raised my hand, Jeff.
Oh, I did too.
This is Shanta. Hi.
So please check the raise hand box.
Okay, it went off the top of the screen. Ali, you're up.
Yes, thank you, Tom, for being here. And I think you would be a great senator. But this question is for you, but also for all the candidates here. And I wanted to know specifically about your stand around the protest at Battery Park, and for all the candidates also to please speak to that as well. Thank you so much.
Great question, big topic. I will say this is an inflection point in our country's history. I think people are going to look back at this point in time, generations from now, and both the context of the pandemic and the systemic racism that has been persistent throughout our country for a long period of time and has had a much brighter light shining on it these days. I think these protesters have a lot to say and we need to listen to them. I will say that messaging counts, words matter, and I've had concern with some of the words used in the protesters because, as Ruth Bader Ginsburg said, fight for the things that you care about, but do it in a way that get others that lead them to follow you. And so I think it's important that we have leaders that use words that get people to buy in and follow that leadership. So I do not want to take away the rights of the protesters to have their say. I don't know if this answers your question well enough, Councillor Dang, but I would say that this is a time where it's not just Burlington, it's our entire country where we need to reflect. We need to look at where we are as a people and as a society and where we could do better. And I think these protests are helping us do that. I don't know if that's a good answer for what you were looking for.
Thank you.
Very good. Okay, I don't see any other.
Tom's time is up now.
Okay, so the next person in the queue is Kamulia Long.
Okay, sorry.
Welcome.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate you having me. Still trying to get a hang of this. So, did I go away?
No, you're fine.
Are you there?
Okay, you can still hear me. Okay, perfect. All right, well, thank you for having me tonight. My name is Kamulia Long. I grew up in the Burlington area. I actually grew up down in Northgate. Spent my younger years walking to Flynn and Hunt. Later went to Essex High School where I graduated. And similar to Tom, I've given this the speech before. So graduated Essex High School, played football locally for the Vermont Ice Storm. I later joined the Vermont National Guard, served 2 tours in Afghanistan, came back, opened a business in real estate, where I am currently still serving as a real estate agent and looking to grow that business, which kind of brings us to the here and now. I decided to throw my hat in the ring because I had some concerns with the direction that the state was going and I wanted to make a change. I feel that there are people within the county who don't feel that they are being accurately represented. I feel as though they don't feel like they have a voice to the point where they would abstain from voting or abstain from participating in the process. And I think that's concerning. I feel that way because I know that there was a time where I felt that way, and I know that I can't be the only one who was feeling that. So instead of putting my faith in someone else to do the things that I felt needed to be done, I decided to step up and do what needs to be done. So that's why I'm here. As far as the things that I'm looking to affect change on, limited taxation. I would love to clean up Lake Champlain. I can't tell you the last time I swam in the lake, and it was probably when I was living down in Northgate because that's where I learned to swim down at Letty Beach. And safe communities is of importance to me, which I guess brings me around to Ali's question in regards to what's going on down in Battery Park. I have some concerns with what's going on down in Battery Park. I am all for protest. I'm all for peaceful protests. I question whether or not that's actually what's going on, and based on some of the things that I saw on the news and my experience actually being down in the park and speaking with individuals, I'm not even sure that they are fully aware why they are there. I have concerns that when I ask them if they felt that they were making a difference, they couldn't answer the question for me. My concern is that all of this activity just makes us numb to what the real problem is, or to the fact that there's a problem at all. And it will just lead to nothing changing. And that's not the point. I know that the officer just recently stepped down, and it would be my understanding that that group would likely see that as a victory. However, he just stepped down, he just resigned, he's still getting paid. And really what has changed, other than the fact that we've decided to negotiate with a group who is using, is that my 5 minutes?
No.
Okay, sorry. So that's my answer to that question. I question whether or not they're actually affecting any real change or any lasting change, and what their agenda is on that end. So I guess with that, I'll end my piece.
Thank you very much. Let's see.
He's got 2 minutes more if people have questions.
Oh. Okay, I don't see any, so let's keep moving and then we will come back. So next in the queue is Ginny Lyons.
Thank you, Jeff. And it's a pleasure to be here and see everyone. Again, I'm disappointed that we're not all together so that we could have a conversation. We're still in session. The Senate will probably adjourn on Friday, and we've been working very, very hard. As you know, COVID has overtaken a great deal of the session, and we've allocated and appropriated funds to support people. I was very interested in hearing Brittany talk about the Everyone Eats program, and the funding that we have given to the food bank, I think, is partially helpful to her as she promotes that program. I think it's absolutely terrific. The Skinny Pancake and other restaurants who are moving forward, like Bliss Bee, are doing a real service to our communities. And as she was talking, I was also thinking about a bill that we just have passed that's called the Older Vermonters Act. And it is related to the Older Vermonters Act at the federal level, where we are beginning to look at a systematic approach to how we can help ourselves age in place and have some developmentally appropriate services for all of us. So going forward, I know we think about bike lanes and we think about street crossings and transportation, but there are many ways that we need to look at systematic improvements in our social, transportation, environment, in our housing and so on for people, because no question, our demographic is getting older. We would like to see more young people, absolutely, and I think COVID is starting to bring them in. However, we'll be working, one of my goals in going back is to work to improve what services we have for older Vermonters, and not just older Vermonters, but for all of us as we age, to have the services in place, and we can look forward to having those. I know that Sarah mentioned the Heineberg Center. One of the concerns that we have identified in our state and in our local area is how can we ensure that places like the Heineberg Center are fully supported over time. We know that volunteers are there every day. It's a big fundraising job. But so we're looking to support programs like those offered in the Heineberg Center. And I'm very interested in going back and completing work on that. There are a lot of other things that will require oversight during the next session, not the least of which is COVID and how those appropriations are being used. Of course, I think Ali Deng has brought up a very important issue, and that is the issue of diversity. And a report came out today from the Department of Health regarding health disparities in our state with respect to COVID. And that report indicates that our minority populations, including Native Americans and African Americans, are disproportionately affected by COVID. So we need to put in place programs and medical treatment that supports those folks who might be more susceptible to the disease. Battery Park, you know, as it started, it was all the protests that we've seen across the country come from a good place. They come from a place of emotion that wants to support people and wants to ensure that we have equal representation and equality in our city, in Burlington, in our county, Chittenden, and across the state and the country. But I have been concerned from the beginning about some of the changes that have taken place, from a peaceful protest to a protest that is the result of people being together, and going from the peaceful protest to, I think, as Kumula just expressed, something that they may not understand. So let's not forget what this is all about. And it is about reacting to the need for policy change, a need for
Ginny, your time is up.
Okay, I'm sorry. You know, that's the trouble with us senators. We do have a lot of things to say. I look forward to questions later. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ginny. Okay, next on the list is Chris Pearson.
Great, thank you, everybody. As Ginny said, we are still in session. I'm finishing up my second term in the Senate. I was in the House for many years before that on behalf of part of the Old North End. So I'm sort of in session mode. But I would say my reason for running and what I try to stay focused on when we're in the middle of hundreds of bills flying around is, to put simply, economic, racial, and environmental justice. And so I'll try to highlight a few examples that come to mind just from this week. 2 days ago, we sent, or yesterday maybe, they're blending, we sent the governor an expungement bill. This was language that I had drafted that automatically will remove everybody who's had a marijuana possessions record, will be wiped clean. This impacts about 10,000 people, predominantly, of course, because of war on drugs and our criminal justice with an inherent racial bias has a particular advantage to Vermonters of color. This impacts their ability to seek employment, to apply for all sorts of, whether it's grants or different permissions across the board, whether, you know, your licenses, et cetera. So expungement, very, very proud of that one, an important part of our work around criminal justice. Also S54, which is the marijuana tax and regulate bill. I've been hard on that. Many people have, but I've been one of the voices pushing that. It's a sane policy and important. We sent that to the governor. We're hopeful actually he'll sign it. The same day was Global Warming Solutions Act and override. That's now law. This is sort of been coined the climate bill of the year. I'm not sure I'd go that far because there were a lot of things that we've done around climate change, but I'm the co-chair of the Legislative Climate Solutions Caucus. Been working really hard over the last many years to elevate these issues, right? Vermont is #1 in New England per capita emissions, and we are last in New England in emission reduction compared to our neighbors. So we are not holding up our end of the bargain. This bill provides targets, legal milestones that basically match the Paris Agreement, and also gives a mechanism for accountability so citizens can hold leaders accountable, something, you know, we have failed to do without that kind of push. This all relates, in my mind, to jobs, a sustainable future, stronger jobs. We need to pair climate solutions and sustainable jobs. That will help bring people here. I serve as the vice chair of the Senate Ag Committee. Regenerative agriculture has got to be part of our strengthening our rural economy. And by the way, has a big impact on carbon sequestration, on water quality, and of course, keeping our economy humming. The protests, Ali's question is a great one. I completely applaud the spirit of people coming forward and frankly, not maybe knowing where to turn, coming out into the streets to hold leaders accountable and demand change. I think that's vital. I've seen the difference even in my short time in the Senate, that public grassroots outreach on gun safety has made a huge difference, made that possible for us to push background checks, universal background checks and others. Whereas over my time in Montpelier, it's been impossible to even basically talk about that. That was grassroots pressure. Climate, again, holding leaders accountable. Racial justice, we have advanced police reform. We've advanced all sorts of not flashy headlines maybe, but things like our police for the last 5-6 years all across the state have been required to record racial data as they're making stops. In June, we passed a bill that said if an agency is not doing that, you're going to get a cut in funding. So trying to back up this policy that has not been held. But we do also need to recognize that political protests, grassroots protests like that are blunt instruments. And I don't think we should look to our friends in Battery Park to craft finely tuned policy. I think that they create space so that leaders can come forward and negotiate and recognize, okay, we're worried about police violence. We're worried about law enforcement practice. Let's create systems that deals with that and that creates the accountability that we need. Here in Burlington, we have
Chris, your time is up.
That's
Sorry.
rare in Vermont, but it's not proven to have enough teeth. So it's a good example. Thank you very much. I look forward to questions.
Thank you, Chris. Any questions right at this moment?
His time is up, Jeff.
Yeah. Okay, so
Two more.
Yep. Next on the roster is Keisha Rom.
Thank you, Jeff. Thanks everybody for having me. I see a lot of familiar faces and folks that I am doing continued work with. Lee has really been a great collaborator in helping us work on how our public space reflects everyone in Burlington. And I think of that when I think of the protesters, frankly, because less than 6 months ago, it was radical just to try and paint murals in downtown Burlington with images of people of color on them. And now Will Casso-Condry is completing a second mural in one of our schools after those projects were barely able to go forward just mere months ago. So I think we're seeing a lot of change happen in our community, and it's happening quickly, and that is uncomfortable for people. But we have to shape change before it shapes us. Sylvia, I see on the call, and we're going to be having a conversation about cleaning up Lake Champlain next week with Jenna Olson from the city, and testing for certain, and Sylvia can say more, but testing for certain elements in the water that are not currently as focused on and are toxic. She's shaking her head, but we'll figure it out by next week. And so, it's just great to have a lot of active neighbors like all of you on here. Really applaud the senators who are here, who also just put in a long day in a very long, unprecedented few weeks session in the middle of the election. Really grateful to hear you all talking about voting information and upcoming opportunities to vote. As folks may know, you should get your ballot today, or by the end of this week, by October 7th, or to make sure that you check in case your ballot's you haven't gotten it yet. I have spent 8 years in the House. I served in the House for my entire 20. So
Excuse me, I hate to interrupt, Keisha, but Al, can you please mute? Thank you. All right, carry on.
No problem. So spent my into her 20s in the legislature. So really applaud the focus of others on what we do to change our aging demographics and ensure that we have young families in the state. You know, I think one of my big areas of focus is who those people are that we need to welcome to our state, what they will look like. They're not all going to be, you know, people who like to ski, who are individual remote workers from Boston. You know, they're mostly right now new Americans and immigrants. 90% of our population growth in Vermont in the last 10 years came from people of color. And now we see a lot of those folks starting to leave and saying they're not finding opportunity here. And they have the choice to go elsewhere, to places like Minnesota and Ohio and Pennsylvania, where they have other family and opportunities ahead of them, and affordable housing and affordable childcare. You know, so we have to really be thinking about how to support families, how to support new Americans, and how to be welcoming to people who look different than a majority of the population now in Vermont. That's what I will focus on in the Senate. It's what I have a track record of doing in the House, even when you think about things that are real bread and butter for the economy, such as access to home ownership. You know, we don't just want to have affordable housing that's temporary for folks. I worked with people like City Councilor Sarah Carpenter when she was at Vermont Housing Finance Agency to ensure we had greater access to affordable home ownership. And people in their 30s with an average income between $40,000 and $60,000 could actually afford to buy a home and access a tax credit. So I try to advance realistic solutions that work for everyone. I wholeheartedly support the protesters in Battery Park. I was there yesterday. I'm leading a workshop for them next week on inside, outside, and movement politics, and how, you know, they really, a lot of them are high school students and people in their early 20s who are now, you know, figuring out what does it look like to provide our own safety and protection, to provide blankets to people in the park, to get food to everybody in the evenings. This is a learning experience for them. And, you know, they are young people who are trying to shape their own future with a lot of uncertainty and being handed, you know, a pretty raw deal. And so, you know, I want to make sure that they learn from this and grow from this. And, you know, they already have achieved significant results from their work and their efforts. And, you know, I think it should cause a lot of local city officials and anyone who's running for mayor or city council to think about the police union contract. When I was in the legislature, I tried to introduce legislation to hold accountable police officers with use of deadly force. And that couldn't even come off the wall because of the police union. So, you know, they're really changing the conversation in ways that make our communities more just. And I just want to say before I end, we're having this conversation the day that a grand jury failed to indict anyone in any of the 3 officers in Kentucky for anything related to killing Breonna Taylor, a Black woman, in her own home while she was sleeping. So, you know, if we say we want justice in Kentucky, we have to want justice right here in our backyard when people are fighting for that in Bennington, in Newport, in Virgins, and right here in Burlington.
Keisha, your time's up. Thanks.
Good timing. Are you running your own clock, Keisha? Well done. Okay, and then our next presenter is candidate is Erica Reddick.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, NPA, for having us this evening. My name is Erica Reddick. I am a resident here in the new north end of Burlington. And God, so much was said tonight that I want to respond to, and I'm going to have to, now I definitely am going to fill 5 minutes. First of all, I just want to say, you know, we all want everyone to be happy and healthy and safe and really have an opportunity for their own personal version of the American dream. And it is my experience that the best way that we can ensure that everyone has that opportunity is to remove any barriers to entrepreneurship, small business ownership, and home ownership. And the biggest barriers that we face here in Vermont are high taxes and high regulation. So we want to be loving and kind, and we want to pay for all of this stuff for the less fortunate. All of us want that. Nobody disagrees. But when you tax the lower and middle class to the point where they leave because they can't afford to take care of their children, and survive. When they can't start their own business, when they can't buy a home, they leave. So what we really need to be doing is encouraging more economic growth here, lower taxes, lower regulations, so that somebody can build an apartment complex with 10 units and not have to pay hundreds, literally, this is not a joke, this is actual, hundreds of thousands of dollars in fees before an architectural drawing is done or a shovel is put in the ground for Act 250 environmental things. We are making ourselves poor here in Vermont by these overreaching legislations that keep getting passed. We keep saying we care about the little guy, but we show that we don't when we make it harder and harder to live in Vermont. It's one of the reasons why I will be pushing to remove the income tax on Social Security for seniors. The fact that we tax Social Security on our seniors, I think, is unconscionable. And that's why they leave. We need these people to stay here and to encourage us. So we need to make it as easy as possible. I should have been timing myself, Jeff, because now I don't know how long I have to go, but
2.5 minutes.
2.5 minutes. Okay. As far as the protesters in Battery Park, I've seen a lot of signs around the city that say things like, this little state says no to hate. This brave little state says no to hate. And yet what we have seen is a rise in hatred, not against people of color, but against police officers, against Christians, against conservatives. So my neighbor can have his Joe Biden sign on his yard and be fine, but if you have a Trump sign, you're going to get vandalized. So I think that's really a problem because there is a lot of hate to go around, and people in Chittenden County are incredibly prejudiced against people who do not accept or go along with the progressive ideas. And that's really, really shameful. But most importantly, I just want to say, as a resident of Burlington, because I'm not just a Senate candidate, I live here. And this idea that any one of you could sit there and say that Vermonters and Burlington residents are all just a bunch of racists, and it's your duty to fix us, I think is so insulting that I can't even believe that anybody listens to that. Like, you want us to vote for you, and yet you insult us and say that we're terrible people. And I would ask for any of you that are in support of the protesters at Battery Park, if you can differentiate for me, all cops are B words, kill cops, die pigs, and things like that. If you can differentiate that hate from, I don't like Black people, or I'm prejudiced against people of color, or whatever. I hate Black people, let's say. Let's say we are a bunch of racists. Does saying kill cops make that better? What does that fix? That's my question for that. If the protesters can start to differentiate their message from the hate that they purport to be protesting against, I will go down there and I'll protest with them. Thank you. That's all I have to say.
And you're incredibly good on timing. You're just done. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Linda, looks like we've got about 5 minutes, potential of 5 minutes of wrap up. So does anyone have any questions that they would like to talk to the candidates? So Bridget.
Thank you. Kesha, this is one for you. And it's a comment rather than a question, but I really, really appreciated your discussion of the Battery Park. I guess that's how we're framing the issue right now, but the protesters on police violence and the need to look at the role of the police union. I think that of all the discussions across the nation on this issue, I have not heard any substantive conversation about the role of the union in this debate. So many times, particularly today, as someone mentioned earlier, we in the public hear, well, we can't arrest the police officer or indict the police officer because she was following the rules. Well, what are the rules? And maybe it's the rules and the provisions in the contract that need to be changed. And I haven't heard it. And Kesha, I just thought it was very refreshing for a politician from our city and from our state to make mention of it. So I just wanted to say thank you.
So,
yay.
Keisha, do you have a response before I move on to Sarah Carpenter?
I don't know if others do, you know, and Sarah, I don't want to put her on the spot, but she might be able to speak to any changes the city council is considering for the union contract. You know, as I understand it from talking to a couple city councilors, one of the reasons they were able to come to some kind of agreement with Bellevance is because he was a supervisor in a non-union role. And that's much harder to do with people in the union. And, you know, I think many of us would agree I'm supported by many labor organizations, but I said from the beginning, I hope the police union, you know, doesn't even put out a questionnaire. But, you know, I would love to have a dialogue. And at the same time, I've been trying to talk to them forever about if you lose the trust of the people,
that's right,
it's really hard to get back. And, you know, that's where we are. And I've tried to work with them on that at the state level and the local level for a long time.
All right. Thank you, because Sarah Carpenter has her hand up, so I want to give her an opportunity. Sarah?
On the police side, I agree with that. We've got our work to do. I mentioned our joint committee. I mentioned the fact that we've tasked the commission to come up with a series of things. The contract's up in 22. We need to fix it. My hand was actually more, and I'm not sure if I can get 6 answers, so I'm going to pose these as there's lots of conversation about taxes. In the city of Burlington, 70% of our taxes relate to school funding. Yeah. And I guess as county senators, I encourage you to look at Burlington's burden, particularly for our kids that may have special needs, are very low income. We're 60% rental. We have a big burden on our school system, and that's really one of the reasons our taxes are very high. So I don't know if you can answer me in 1 minute or less how you're going to fix it, but it's such a critical issue for this city. And I know, in fact, it's a critical issue for the rural towns as well, but Chittenden County has this odd combination of affluent towns and poor towns, Burlington being a poor town, even though we're not perceived as that. So I just encourage you to take that on. And kind of in that same context, and maybe this is more editorial, as it was brought up earlier, the concept of regional work. You know, I think, again, part of our problem is we're so town focused. And I've lived here my entire life, and I know how that works, but we need to be sharing some of these burdens. Talk about racial justice. You know, what's the racial justice program in South Burlington or Charlotte or Essex? You know, what are they doing? Can we share resources on policing? Schools, we have 2 tech centers. Do we need 2 tech centers? So I guess those are just school funding and regionalization, I think really are high priority.
Thank you, Sarah. And yeah, I will say that, you know, based on the way the school funding formula works, that the distinction between home ownership and rental is a really significant distinction in terms of voting for and funding education. Ali, I think you got a minute. Ali Jang?
It will be very, very quick. And I think I will start with a comment on how disappointed I am hearing some of the response to my question from those who will be representing me as my senator and taking public safety very lightly, not taking into account the rule of law, right? So now this other question is about still public safety, and I would want Mr. Jabali, to start. And was just wondering, what is your stand around the F-35, Mr. Kamulia Long, with your military background, and was just wondering what's your stand on it, and maybe extend it to the other candidates as well. Thank you.
Sure. So I understand that there's a concern with the F-35s in the area, but I also understand that the F-35s serve a purpose as far as first responders and their ability to defend certain areas. I guess that's all I can really say about that. As far as their ability to respond to certain threats in certain areas, we serve as a key place for that. That being said, I also understand that there's a concern in regards to noise. I appreciate you bringing it up. As I said, I'm looking to better understand some of the concerns of the residents of Chittenden County, and this is the first time that I'm hearing about the F-35 issue. I don't know if that answers your question, and if not, I apologize.
No problem.
Well, certainly there's an opportunity for you folks to continue the conversation. And with that, we have reached our 9 o'clock target. And I really appreciate everybody participating this evening. So thank you, good night, and we will see you again next month.
Thank you, everybody. And I just want to remind everyone on the city's website under CEDO, there's the place to join our steering committee. We need help. Our numbers are down. Also to present and also reach out to any one of our steering committee members for topics. We appreciate everyone's input and want to make it good for wards 4 and 7.
The other thing, a reminder that Channel 17 was recording this meeting and therefore we'll be broadcasting it throughout Chittenden County. So particularly for the candidates, your coverage was better than just what you saw tonight.
Thank you.
You're everybody done? Good night. I'm going to end the meeting now.